Hello and welcome everyone to Red Planet Live. I am your host, Ashton Zeth, and I am elated to be hosting the Mars Society's podcast and leading the conversation about human exploration of the universe and the future settlement of Mars. As a longtime space enthusiast, I am passionate about STEM education and making humanity an interplanetary species. Thank you everybody for joining today and supporting Red Planet Live. So have just a couple announcements before we kick off the conversation today. My first announcement is actually a personal request. I have applied to Space for Humanity's Fly With Me in Zero G training, and this is an opportunity for me to team up with a space mentor to experience weightlessness on a zero G flight. So my ask of you is this: if you could please give that a scan right there, go to that video. This is my video application to the Fly With Me in Zero G training. And if you can, it's only 90 seconds. Watch the video, give it a like, give it a comment. That would really help me as I pursue my astronaut dream. So please and thank you on that. All right, shifting gears to our normal content. The Mars Society has launched its capital campaign to upgrade the Mars Desert Research Station in Utah. This is a vital habitat where scientists, engineers, and students simulate life on Mars right here on Earth. So your donation directly supports critical improvements to this one-of-a-kind research facility, and every donation does come with a special perk as a thank you for being a part of this mission. So head to the Mars Society's website. You can see it right there. We go. Right there. Check out that link and help donate to the Mars Society's MDRS facility. And lastly, the 2025 International Mars Society Convention is scheduled for October 9th through the 11th at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. This year, we are celebrating our 28th year, and this global conference will focus on Mars exploration, human settlement planning, and cutting-edge space technologies. This year's theme is Mars, the Time Has Come, which aligns with the U.S. government's recent announcements to prioritize a near-term human missions to Mars. So please, we are excited to see you at this year's convention. So go to the website, RSVP. There will be an in-person and there is a virtual option, but we hope to see you there at USC in October. All right. So for today, I am very excited to introduce today's guest, who is an experienced space traveler. Tracy Dyson is a NASA astronaut and chemist with a distinguished career in science and human spaceflight. Selected as a NASA astronaut in 1998, she has logged over 188 days in space, including time aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour and time at the International Space Station. Dyson conducted 3 spacewalks totaling nearly 23 hours. And then she was also a flight engineer with Expedition 23 and 24. Prior to her astronaut career, she earned a PhD in chemistry from the University of California, Davis, focusing on atmospheric chemistry. Known for her passion for science communication and education, Dyson continues to support NASA's mission as a veteran astronaut and role for future explorers. I'm so honored to have you today. Welcome, Tracy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ashton. It's great to be here with you and all of your guests.
Well, I'm so excited to chat with you. The timing is perfect. It feels like, especially this week, we've seen some exciting, announcements and record-breaking all-female flights. So, want to kick off the conversation today with a segment that we do. It's called Question of the Day. As you always hear me say, for those that are listening, this is just meant to be an icebreaker. There's no right or wrong answer. Just want to hear your opinion. So in honor of the all-female crew that went up on Monday with Blue Origin, the question is, if you could assemble your all-female crew, who would you want to join you? I know it's tough. It doesn't have to be six seats, but if you could pick a couple of your favorite ladies to join you on an all-female crew, who would you pick?
Well, I'd pick the 2 ladies that I was just in space with, Sunny Williams and Jeanette Epps, for sure. I'd probably take, Jessica Chastain, because she's already got some experience in a spacesuit. And I have had conversations with her in the past about what it's like to train. And so I feel like she would be ready and look better than all the rest of us in a spacesuit. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, including myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
4.
Yep.
I get 2 more?
Sure. Yeah. Keep them coming.
Right? There's 6. Oh, I would invite Sarah McLachlan.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
she's she's by far my favorite female vocalist. I got to talk to her from space, and I think she'd be pretty jazzed to be in microgravity, and she would have some beautiful lyrics, I think, uh, from the view and be
Yeah.
inspired.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Her
uh,
witnessing the overview effect and experiencing that and then putting it into song would be pretty incredible.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So for sure, Sarah Mac. You know, I'd want a family member with me,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think. I think. Let's just have it a mystery guess, but it would be a family member.
Okay.
But you have to choose those wisely, right? Because you, you want your family with you, because it's a long journey, and
Mhm.
you want a piece of home with you. But at the same time, um, not everybody in your family's cut out to be in space, and they've even
That's
told me that. So I'd have to think
that's
about who
fair.
I'd want to drag into a space capsule with me.
Right,
That would
yeah.
be my dream team.
Who would you wanna spend, in a small confined space for an extended period of time, tackling, challenging, tasks every day? You definitely have to pick wisely the family member that you bring with you.
Right, because you want them to still like you when you get back.
Right, right, yeah. You wanna still be family and be friends, when you return. Well,
Yeah.
very exciting. Thank you for that answer. I think that's great. I would have to agree with you on that. We would need to have some seasoned veterans, NASA astronauts, of course. But I'd maybe say for myself, um, there's the new, commercial space tourists and astronauts that have been going up. Specifically, like Kelly Girardi, Emily Calandrelli, who I've had on the podcast as well, and they're a part of this crew of like their space girl crew, and I always want to like be a part of that crew. So I'd say Kelly Girardi, maybe Emily Calandrelli as well. I'd have to say maybe I'd want to fly with as well because they've got some experience at this point,
Mhm.
but they're just so cool. And then that would be such an experience for myself. So I'd have to say those would be on my crew.
Very cool.
There we go. Well, jumping right into questions. For those that are listening, a reminder, like always, if you have your questions, please submit those in the chat. I will try to sprinkle those in throughout the conversation. But we talk on the podcast a lot about education, the value of knowledge and how that leads you to this point. You spend your entire life working towards this goal. So let's start in your background. I mentioned in your bio that you have a background in chemistry. How did your educational path shape your journey to becoming an astronaut?
Um, I think I should preface by saying that I followed so though I knew I wanted to be an astronaut.
Mhm.
I followed the path that most interested me, though it was not exactly what people told me that they thought I should do if I
Uh-huh.
wanted to be an astronaut.
Okay.
So if you looked historically at our astronaut corps to that point, it had primarily been test pilots, military folks, and
Yeah.
then astrophysicists come to mind,
Mhm.
um, and I didn't want to do any of those things. And so I would say that the what turned out to be my success was that I followed a path in an interest that I had in science
Mhm.
that I don't know just brought up my passion, and it was through that passion that I was able to accomplish a lot in a short period of time and be exposed to a number of different things that really helped me understand myself and what interests me,
Mhm.
and was able to just completely apply myself to whatever I was doing. And so I went into chemistry as a college student, knowing that I just really enjoyed chemistry. I didn't know how good I'd be at it, and it
Mhm.
turned out that being in the classroom was maybe in some ways more of a struggle for me than actually being in the laboratory and using my hands and
Mhm.
working with tools and all sorts of things like that. So it's interesting what you discover, like I said. And so I followed chemistry. I was really motivated to do that. I also worked for my father, who was an electrical contractor at the time, and I was one of his electricians. And so I spent my whole childhood and my teenage years working for my father, not just on job sites, but also working on cars. And so I got this real interest in tools and fixing things. And I got to see from somebody who was very good at troubleshooting, my dad, uh, be faced with a problem, and instead of you know kind of worrying about how he was going to fix it, he just tackled it, and I got to watch that. And those kind of skills are something that some people are just born with it, but others get blessed by watching really talented people do it, and that was my case. And so my career path kind of led me to the astronaut corps soon after I graduated from graduate school. But I would say that it was all of these interesting aspects of those roles that really led to the success I had, even on my missions, not to mention getting into the Corps. So
Mhm.
I basically followed the path of chemistry all the way through graduate school and my postdoctoral career. But I wouldn't say that it was anything specific about the chemistry that I was studying. It was really just the exposure I was getting to science, the way scientists think, the way they communicate, as well as my hands on the actual equipment and seeing how things work.
Mhm.
That's kind of
So
in a big nutshell.
yeah. So, speaking of that educational background and maybe not taking the traditional route of, military test pilot or becoming an engineer, but following chemistry, what advice would you give to young people that are trying to navigate that difficult road of, hey, I'm here and maybe I want to become an astronaut, and now it seems like there's more paths to get there, but what advice would you give to young people?
Well, I hope my advice isn't too outdated, because, like you said, there's so many more paths to get to becoming some flavor of astronaut, whether it's at NASA or if it's in a private sector.
Hmm.
Um, it I think that, though, the same holds true, is that um, don't be afraid of the things that you don't understand. Ask questions. And that's from the moment you start school to even when you get beyond collecting your degrees and you're out there doing a job and you're afraid that people look at you in a certain way and think that you should know so much.
Hmm.
And then you miss out on really understanding things because you're not willing to ask questions. And so I would say that the best advice I was given going through my entire career path was to ask questions and to be curious. And that's kind of what a scientist is known for, is to really just fueled by curiosity. And I think you could say that just about any field. But as I was going through my career as a chemist, I was encouraged because they said all it takes is curiosity and hard work. And that's the other thing, is that wherever you end up, whether it's an astronaut or some other field, it takes a lot of hard work. Things are just not handed to you, and if they were, they weren't worth getting. And so I'd say that make sure that you're prepared to put in the long hours, or study to a depth that no one else is willing to go, to understand what it is that you're pursuing.
Hmm.
And I think the other aspect of this is finding a good mentor,
Hmm.
looking toward those people who have experience perhaps in what you want to do, or just greater experience at life, and clinging on to those people with experience, and asking them kind of what their thoughts are, specifically with what you're doing, if they know you well enough. And so I think
Hmm.
surrounding yourself with good mentors is also really important.
Oh, that's wonderful advice. I'm really gonna to take that to heart. There's a few pieces there that you said that really resonated with myself, and the comment about finding a mentor is something that I've been trying to do myself as I'm starting on this journey. I think when I say, "Oh, I want to be an astronaut someday," like people think I'm crazy, but
Right.
it's one thing at a time, and putting yourself in those positions where you have an opportunity to learn, you have an opportunity to be curious and ask questions. And so, selfishly, I get the opportunity to ask you questions, and so this means a lot to me. So yeah, thank you for that advice. But Speaking of hard work and having to dedicate yourself, we know that astronaut training is incredibly intense. So tell us about your experience in astronaut training. What surprised you? How did you prepare for astronaut training, both physically and mentally?
Well, we go through phases of training, and so and I've been in the Corps for not quite 30 years, but just about. And what I had to do in the very beginning as a candidate is a lot different than what I have to do today.
Hmm.
In part because, as anyone knows that has spent a long time pursuing something, you start to get good at it, and you know what you need to do, and you just are better at managing information and kind of. Practice makes perfect sort of thing. And so there's an element of that, but all the way through, you physically, astronauts need to be in good shape
Hmm.
and healthy. They're kind of two separate lanes, but they go together. You don't want to have any kind of medical condition that is either chronic or could pop up while you're in space, because
Hmm.
they become those things become a lot more difficult to
Absolutely.
remedy in that environment, regardless of how prepared you are. And so your physical health is really important, but also your fitness is super important. And it's not just our most physical demanding job as an astronaut is, of course, the training, and in particular the spacewalk training,
Hmm.
because we're in a pressurized suit. And if you could imagine, anybody who's lifted weights,
Hmm.
imagine if every motion that your body made was against resistance. That's what it's like to operate in a pressurized suit. And then if the suit it doesn't isn't custom made to your body, and you have to learn how to maneuver inside of it, which many of us, more slender people do in these large, bulky suits, you can end up actually injuring yourself because you're trying to work against metal parts that don't give way to your strength, and so
Hmm.
they'll end up breaking you. So you have to be physically fit. You have to be physically strong in order to just operate in that environment and overcome the challenges that you will land in, for sure. I mean, it may not be a pressurized suit that doesn't fit you very well, but it'll be something.
Hmm.
And you've got to be physically ready to handle that kind of a stress. Also, the dynamic events of launching into space, going from the force of one gravity to microgravity,
Hmm.
and the velocities that it takes to get there, do take a toll on your body. And then likewise, when you come back to Earth, it's like a rebirth. I mean, you're coming out of a womb of sorts when you go from being in space for a period of time. And even if you've been there for a couple of weeks, you'll feel it. But certainly if you've been there for 6 months or longer, your body has adapted to that environment. And when you come back to Earth, and you don't gradually come back to Earth, you rapidly come back to Earth,
Yeah.
and your body's just trying to figure out what happened. The stronger you are, the better you will recover. And that's why on orbit, we have a full complement of exercise equipment, ranging from resistive exercise to cardiovascular exercise.
Hmm.
And that's to prepare us for being able to walk back on Earth after being in microgravity. So we have just a whole complement of ways to prepare ourselves physically, but then mentally. Now, that's probably, I mean, that's right on par with physically how you need to be prepared, because face it, I mean, it's like life on steroids, where things just do not go the way you expect them to go.
Hmm.
And there are plenty of things outside of your own control, and you have to go with it. So imagine your life right now when things like that happen. I mean, you're on your way to work, although you, Ashton, I don't know, you don't drive very far with your with your podcast, but I'm sure you've sat in traffic, I mean, things like that pop up. How do you handle it? Just little things like that. Not to mention when you strap yourself inside of a rocket, and then 20 seconds prior to ignition, the engine's cut off, and you're like, what happened? And not only does your launch not happen that day, but the second attempt of your launch has impacts to it that prolong the amount of time that you're in free space inside of a tiny capsule. I'm describing what happened on my most recent mission, but things like that just start to snowball. how are you going to handle it? And how are you going to, what's your character going to be like when you're in hot water like that? And what are you going to be like toward the rest of your crewmates? And those are the things that you need to be thinking about today. But I bet you, Ashton, I just got off topic. I don't know. You inspired me with your question, but
No,
if there's any merit in anything I'm saying, what I'm trying to encapsulate is being an astronaut is unique. But the problems we face are not. They're just a unique environment in which we get to experience them. And so your listeners, for yourself, this is probably really pertinent, but for anybody out there listening, these kinds of things, your physical health, your mental health, and your expectations and your ability to recognize what's in your control and what's not, that is something that we all have to face on a daily basis. So practice now is what I'm trying to say.
okay, so you're saying the next time I'm feeling like I don't want to work out, to push through, get through that workout, get to strength training, because every time I'm preparing for that future opportunity.
Absolutely. And I would go so far as to say it's in those moments where you don't feel like working out and you get yourself there without injury, of course, but you find the will within yourself to do that thing you don't feel like doing. And you've gained a lot more than just physical strength. You've gained this mental toughness. And that's what you want. You want to be mentally tough as well as physically tough. So yeah, you're on the right track.
Lesson. I'm taking that with me after this. When I go to my next workout, I'm going to be thinking about this conversation. And
Good
when
for
it gets
you.
tough. Well, I think we have a video. So we were just talking about your experience on the ISS and flight. So let's see. We're going to play a video. It's going to cut out for a second, and then we'll ask you some questions about it.
We have liftoff. Dyson, Novitsky, and Vasilevskaya finally underway on a 2-day journey to the International Space Station.
During my previous missions, we were assembling the space station, and using the space station as a laboratory was just in the infancy of our program. And so coming back now, and the assembly is complete, and we are full throttle on utilization and science and technology and demonstrations. It's really been a joy having a science research background to come here and do science.
Tracy, on 3, if you see storage side, the surface goes up.
You want me to take the camera and give you a closer look inside?
Okay, Tracy, thanks. Looks good. Great.
So by why, I suppose you mean why do this or why be here? And I think because we can and we should. How much ingenuity has gone into doing what we do. I mean, just the module that we're in alone is miraculous, and all of the things that it takes to put this together with the whole complement of the International Space Station. And so when you think about the potential and what we have accomplished so far and how we have accomplished it together, it's like, why not?
So cool. Gives me chills. How exciting.
That takes me back.
Right. Give you a little nostalgia, like make sure fit. Well, there's a lot to unpack in that video. We see you conducting quite a bunch of different research. Can you walk us through some of the experiments? What were the research objectives while you were there?
Yeah, it's really hard to put all that in a compact amount of time, because there's like there's thousands of investigations ongoing on the International Space Station, both inside and outside. But on any given increment, which is the period of time of our mission, each of our individual missions, we're doing maybe about 300 or so individually, where my hands are actually touching experiments. Mm-hmm. And the disciplines range from physical sciences to biological sciences to human research to technology demonstrations, you name it. And some of it has, a definite spin on what's going on here at Earth. A lot of them are focused on going beyond low Earth orbit. What is the body doing in microgravity? How could we learn from that? So it's just a beautiful spectrum of disciplines and studies and investigations. But some that really stand out to me are the ones where my hands are in it, right? And you saw in some of those videos, my hands are in a glove box, and there's things that I'm injecting and cleaning and installing, and those are the kinds of experiments that, as a scientist, but also as an astronaut, being an operator is kind of the big term that we use on board. Where I wasn't the one that dreamed up this experiment. There's this cerebral giant on the ground called a principal investigator, and it was their brainchild and all of their funding that put together this package and sent it to orbit. And then they trust me to assemble it all for them and to conduct the experiment to help flesh out results and data for them. Some that are really fascinating to me, because I can see them, are the biological experiments. Though I'm chemist by background, a lot of the physical sciences were basically enclosed in a box, and I plugged it in and I pulled it out. But the biological sciences, like we did stem cell research, and one of those scenes you saw me with 2 syringes, and I'm injecting media and pulling out waste from a cell that contains living tissues, brain tissues. And the investigators are trying to understand certain neurological disorders. And by removing the by removing the gravity component, you can start to tease out some of these other processes that would basically go unnoticed or be masked by the force of gravity. And so some of these experiments are extremely elegant, not just in their concept, but in the equipment that they must use, because we're in a microgravity environment and there are these considerations about things floating, certain forces that are not present in the design in space versus on the ground. And so some of these things that you get to do are just exciting in the way that they've had to pre-plan what they're going to do. Some experiments, like they do 3D modeling of human tissue. And I was an operator with my hands inside of a 3D printer glove box, basically, where I was installing tissue ink cartridges, if you will. And they were building cardiac tissue in this 3D printer. And the other part that's real memorable is when things don't go the way that we expect them to. Yeah. And that's where, as an operator, we really are, I would say, earning our paycheck up there, because we are the eyes, we're the hands, we're the sensory unit for the team on the ground. And we tell them what we're seeing. And we're the ones that are either offering suggestions or trying to implement what the ground is telling us to do. And so there's a lot that is rewarding for us, both from the way things work to the way that they don't, and the teamwork that it takes in order to preserve whatever science we have going on. Some of the other experiments where we are actually the subject of the experiment, so we are always drawing our own blood, collecting other bodily fluid samples for investigations, from saliva to urine to other things, and so we become a collection of data for certain investigators that are looking at either long-term studies of astronaut health, or just what does the body do in terms of immunity, in terms of neurovestibular, cognitive processes, as well as eyesight. It turns out astronauts, their eyesight changes when they experience microgravity for any length of time. And so we're trying to understand the mechanism for that, because it doesn't affect all astronauts. And so there's just interesting things that are yet to be learned just from the human body alone. And so, actually, I could probably keep on going talking about some of those studies, but there's a sample of some of the exciting stuff, the sophisticated science that's being done on board.
And I could listen to you go on and on about all the experiments. And no, I love what you mentioned about the physiological impacts that space has. It makes me think about the twin study with Scott and Mark Kelly, and how one is technically taller and a little bit younger or a little bit older than the other one now after that time in space. So it's pretty incredible. I always look forward to seeing the results of those experiments and that research. Well, we know on a typical day, you're doing lots of research, experiments, you're spending your time working out as well to maintain, your musculature, your bone density. What else does a typical day look like for an astronaut on the ISS?
Well, a typical day without any kind of what we call critical or dynamic operations, where it's really you wake up, we get a period. Our day, the way that it's scheduled, is much like your own work day, where we wake up and we have a certain period of time, like an hour and a half to 2 hours to what we call post sleep, and that period of time is where we get cleaned up, we eat our breakfast, and we kind of look ahead to see what the day has in store for us. And because the plans could have changed overnight, and what we went to bed understanding could have been completely changed by the time we wake up. And then we kick off every morning with what's called a daily planning conference, a DPC, because we're NASA and we like acronyms. We love acronyms. And that is a conference that takes place around the globe. So every control center, from Houston to Huntsville to Munich to Tsukuba, Japan, to Moscow in Russia, we go around all control centers, and then we learn about what other updates may have occurred. And that's kind of a place where we all gather for about 10 minutes, and then we're off. We go from that point to midday meal with maintenance, with sometimes we're doing crew medical checks. We're having our checkups. We're doing hearing tests. We could be cleaning things, more specifically for experiments or systems. We could be repairing things, as well as doing all the experiments and so forth. We're also exercising. Every single crew member exercises. We get 2.5 hours. But I would say that an hour of that is taken up with setting up everything, showering, getting changed and all that. But an hour and a half of solid resistive exercise and cardiovascular exercise combined every single day. So that's fit in there somewhere. You have a midday meal, and it may not be lining up with everybody else in your crew. So it's not like we all we float and eat together. We reserve that for the evening meal for the most part. But then after midday meal to the next DPC, which is our evening DPC, where we do it all over again, talk to everybody about how the day went, getting ready for the next day. And again, we just either continue what we were doing in the earlier part, or I could have up to 15 different activities in one day. And if you saw my band on the timeline, it would knock your socks off some days, because it's like, you're starting and stopping, starting and stopping, starting and stopping. And sometimes you don't have time to really review ahead of time. So you got to get really good at speed reading and understanding things, and being prepared before you get there is really important. And so the day is busy, to say the least, to say the least. And once you have the end of the day, we call that pre-sleep. And that's where we kind of wind down, have dinner, talk to family, because at that point, in our crew day on orbit, the way that we operate, the clock that we operate by, is lining up with, say, afternoon here in Houston, where most of our families are. And so then we can have a conversation with family before we go to bed, and then do it all over again. Yeah. And then Saturdays are not even Saturdays. We have to clean the whole space station every Saturday. So there's that.
Kind of a bummer. Well, I think that just puts into perspective that I have no room to complain when my day is busy and I'm in back-to-back meetings, and I'm like, oh, it's great. It's nothing compared to what your day-to-day is like. So, I'm gonna take that as a grain of salt next time, and so much.
Well, Ashton, it sounds like you're just getting good practice.
Exactly.
You just have to imagine it all in microgravity, though, where everything's nothing that you put on a table is staying there. It's like all floating, and you have to figure out where to put everything.
Do you feel like you're catching things? I mean, I know, like, having the Velcro, on your outfit, but like, are you constantly having to catch things? I just imagine, like, how do you ever not get used to, you're used to setting something down and it stays there. Does that ever go away? Or you know that when you set something down, like, it's not going to be there. You're going to have to go and chase it.
Yeah, you develop a sense for where you need to put things, but it depending on, so I mean, everybody progresses. At the beginning, things float away. You float away. You can't control your body. But as time progresses, pretty soon you're actually using the microgravity environment to help you. So, like, if I'm I'm working on something, I can float this other object here, knowing that I have only so much time before I need to grab it and put it where I need it. But things can get lost. And so you learn how to prepare your work site. You learn how to prep things a little better, because what you were just describing, it can be chaos. And you need to learn how to anticipate and harness the chaos a little bit. But that comes with time. And some people are a little quicker at it than others, but it does happen.
Harness the chaos. That's a good take.
Harness the chaos. Yeah.
Love it. Well, part of the most exciting, experience of being on the ISS is the spacewalks. Talk us through what that experience is like.
Well, I think probably the best example would be on my, not this most recent mission, but the mission before that. I did a series of unplanned contingency spacewalks where a real critical component on the station failed. And my spacewalking partner, Doug Wheelock, and I had to go out in short order and go fix this thing. And it took 3 spacewalks. And so it was over a period of 2 weeks, because you need certain number of days in between each one to prep and all of that. But getting prepared for a spacewalk is a mental exercise, and as well as a physical one when you're actually out there doing the work. And it just takes a lot of preparation to understand the task that you're going to do, right down to basically in your mind choreographing how you're going to move when you're out there, given what the environment looks like. And we have a complement of training aids from a VR, virtual reality laptop. And so we can put ourselves out in the environment, literally with goggles on if we choose to go that route, but we can look at the environment and kind of plan our way. We also have a team of people on the ground that are doing their best to choreograph what they think we need to do. And we have a team that walks us through the procedures, because when you're in the spacesuit and you're out in the real environment, you're not expected to remember everything, like settings on a pistol grip tool or a platform and all that stuff. And we don't have yet the capability, at least in our spacesuits, to have like a heads up display. So we couldn't even read procedure. I know there's like glasses out there that can do things like that, like a heads up display, but we don't have that yet. So we do the old fashioned way, and we got a team of folks on the ground that help read us through these procedures, and we just work through comm gaps and things like that. But when you're out there, your focus is so laser on what you're doing and where your hands are going, that you, after a 6.5 to an 8 hour spacewalk, are so mentally exhausted that you hardly realize that your forearms are on fire, because you've had to walk that long on your hands, basically. So it's just lots of concentration. You sleep so well that night, but it's a very long day. You're in the suit very early in the morning, because there's this process to not only get suited up and make sure everything is airtight, or leak tight, I should say, but also to purge our bodies of excess nitrogen so that we don't get decompression sickness as we go through the pressure regimes that we face as we go out into the vacuum or prepare to go into the vacuum. We are not in the vacuum, obviously, but our suits are experiencing that. And so it's a long day, and it's very coordinated with the team on the ground, the team that stays inside the space station that suits you up, as well as the people who are actually in the suits that go outside to do the work.
Right.
But I'll also add that on this space flight, this mission that I just returned from in September, we were supposed to do 3 planned spacewalks, and they were supposed to fix things and upgrade things and retrieve things. But we couldn't get out the hatch on the first spacewalk with 2 attempts, and one of them was a suit issue with my crewmate, and it turned out we had to swap crewmates. Crew had to swap out. I stayed in, but the guys swapped. And then on our second attempt, my suit had a pretty dramatic, the umbilical that feeds water and oxygen and other things to our suits before we actually go out into the vacuum. When I removed it, it sprung a leak, and it was forcefully shooting water, which turned into ice, and it kind of looked like this snow cone machine on steroids. And it was a pretty dramatic event that I could spend a podcast talking about that whole thing and what that does to your character when you're faced with things like that.
We'll do that.
That was probably the sportiest event that I've ever experienced in microgravity. We never got out the hatch. I got 31 minutes of spacewalk time from that as the lead spacewalker. But other than that, I just had another experience with controlled chaos on that spacewalk. Not all of them are like that. So
well, maybe we'll do a future episode and we can debrief that experience specifically.
I'd like that. There's a lot to say about it, but I don't ever have a forum to speak it.
Right. Well, just planting that seed now. You know, I had an opportunity to, talk a little bit about kind of what's happening in the industry, especially with the all-female, crew this week. And so people were asking me about why space? Why are we sending people to space? Why do we have an ISS? Why is it critical that we're doing planetary observation, all of these elements of the space industry as a whole? And sometimes it's hard to summarize for people why this is so critical and what this does for us here on Earth. What would you say to people that ask you that question? And I'm going to steal your answer and I'm going to give it the next time somebody asks me. But why is space important to us? What's the value?
Well, I have to preface and say that it's multifaceted. There's not just one answer to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that anytime we explore, especially an environment that's unknown, not just unknown to us, but unknown to our civilization, we learn things. And we learn things about ourselves as a species. We learn things about ourselves as a planet and where we fit in the whole solar system. We find out about our bodies in this environment. I mean, the ingenuity that has been fleshed out and required not only to get ourselves to that environment, but to maintain a presence, and not just a presence to be there and stake put a flag in the ground or in space, but to actually utilize the environment to learn something. There's just I think there's no substitute. We are explorers, and the realm of space is so vast. I mean, you take our oceans of our very planet, and they seem endless. But we know from telescopes far, far away just how expansive the universe is, and so there is so much to learn there. And it's important as a species that we learn, but also what we've realized, especially with our program, NASA leading the charge with space exploration, forming a partnership, a global partnership. And to look at that International Space Station, I mean, from your own eyes is a spectacular, awesome feeling. But just look at the pictures of the International Space Station and realize that is an engineering marvel, a miracle almost, because this thing was designed and manufactured on the planet. And it was not assembled in its entirety until it got to space. And it was a series of launching these elements using a combination of robotic arms as well as human spacewalkers to actually put these pieces together. And then you have a host of hundreds of people on the ground that are sending commands to these units and running the space station. We are running this thing as a globe. This isn't just Houston sending commands all over the globe. Everybody is participating in this. And so from just a global diplomacy standpoint, this is so valuable because we are learning something about how to work together when we have a precious common goal, like understanding space, utilizing that environment, and seeing where we fit in. I mean, just think about that. Think about who we are as a planet, and the International Space Station represents that and the quest to learn. I mean, you think about the Olympics, which occurred while we were up there, and so it kind of sets this vision in my head about all these countries coming together, and the spirit of the Olympics is so fun. I mean, there's of course the agony of defeat and all that thrill victory, but it's so exciting because all of these fantastic, phenomenal athletes come together for the passion of their game or their sport, and all of the people it takes to support them. And it's just this really cool thing to see the world come together. Well, it's that, but it's in space, and it's going where you never thought you'd go before. Anyway, I think I'm saying the same thing, but in different ways. But
Incredible.
to say why should we go to space? I haven't even touched on what our being in space does for our understanding of our own bodies here on Earth. So we'll save that for another podcast. But just know, Ashton, there's that aspect of it too.
Yeah. I do my best, as a non-astronaut, but to summarize what that means, not just for us as a nation, but us as, a civilization, all of humanity, the human ingenuity that it has taken, the collaboration between countries, nations, individuals to get humanity to where we are now, to have the presence that we do in low Earth orbit. Just trying to explain to people the modern marvel that it is, and what this does for us as humans, to inspire curiosity. I think about the Apollo era and what that did for inspiring not just a nation, but the world, and how we're going to continue on that path of exploration, and what's next beyond just the ISS and just where we are right now in our journey, but sending humans to Mars and beyond, and what's that going to do for us as all of humanity and civilization. It makes me so excited, and I try to get other people as excited about it as obviously people like myself, people like you, and all of NASA. I mean, everybody looks at NASA with kind of a twinkle in their eye, and what NASA has done for the world. So yeah, I commend you for that, and yeah, so exciting. But I know that I've asked a lot of my own questions, and of course I have more, but I want to make sure that I do sprinkle in some audience questions. So let's do a couple of those. Let's see. Question here from San Carlos, who asks, what food do you recommend for the journey to Mars? Love it. Everybody always wants to ask about food.
Food. Oh, well, pack your faves, because it's going to be a long, long road trip to Mars. And it's not just getting there, it's staying there to do useful work and coming back. So pack your faves, and have plenty to share, because that's one of the things on ISS was sharing our meals together and passing whatever dish we had, or interesting food that was in our care package. We'd pass it around, and everybody get to try it. And it's always fun to share with others. So yeah, make sure that you pack your faves, pack plenty, although you might be weight limited, because there's always that constraint when you're launching into space and going far distances. You want to pack light, but don't pack anything that crumbles or has seasoning that likes to float away. Even though once you get to Mars, you things will maybe settle a little bit more, but you'll still have debris floating around, and you just don't want that.
That's a good
I would say that take your favorite beverage, and take one that's warm, that can be warmed up. If there's one requirement when it comes to the galley of a spaceship, it's that you have a way to heat food. And it may seem like, when you're camping, you do your best to get warm beverages and hot food. So I think that having warm food is it goes a long way for your psychological well-being, as well as your tummy. What else? I'm a big coffee drinker, so I would make sure I had my my best coffee and all the things that I want to go in it. But take your favorite beverage. Okay. I probably should stop.
Well, as a Pacific Northwest gal, Starbucks is from Seattle. I also love coffee, so I would say that's probably one of the things that I would also have to have. Let's see, we have a question from Terry. I'm going to assume it's Terry Trevino, but I'm not sure on that. But Terry asks, can you describe the thin blue line of Earth in space? And you can kind of see it in your picture a little bit, but the thin blue line.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's our atmosphere, believe it or not. And it is it is also a silver lining when the sun goes down, and it is um, very thin. It makes you realize just how vulnerable you are on the planet, even off the planet. But there's not a lot between the surface of our planet and the vacuum of space. But that thin blue line relative to the girth of our planet is pretty impressive. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that is our atmosphere. It's blue when the sun is up, and it's well, in the horizon. When the sun is setting or rising, there's this magnificent display of fireworks in terms of the spectrum of colors that appear from these beautiful deep oranges to this spectacular hue of blue that changes from like an aqua to this royal blue that you see the hue of there. So the atmosphere is not only necessary but quite beautiful from space to watch. And then in the mix of that too, if you're up there doing high solar activity, turns out that you get an enormous amount of viewing opportunity of auroras. And if you've ever seen an aurora here from Earth, when you're up in space looking at them, they actually take on a third dimension, whereas, they're spread out like this, but they dance above the atmosphere. And we on the space station travel at 250 miles above the Earth's surface, which is about 100 to 150 miles above the Earth's atmosphere. So we're up above that. So we get to see auroras from a really unique vantage point, and the view of it dancing on the atmosphere is real spectacular, almost as spectacular as the blue of the thin blue line.
It's going to be an incredible sight. Whew, gives me chills thinking about it. Okay, so question from Shelby. This is great. Do you ever have any gastro upsets on the ISS? Everybody.
I love it when people ask real questions like that. Yeah, sure. I mean, you can eat something that didn't agree with you, and so certainly, I'm trying to think of some specific modes of that. But yeah, I mean, you could have too much fiber and have those kind of issues. What we sometimes experience on board is like allergy-like symptoms, because the airflow is very strong inside the space station, but you get into some pockets of the space station which the airflow is not as good, and CO2 can build up in those areas if you're not conscious of the airflow, and that can cause you to get a little bit stuffy. Also, because you're in a microgravity environment, if you go, we keep the place pretty clean, but there's some areas that when we're stowing things, if the things have been there for a long period of time, dust and other particles have settled there, and so when you go and you shake all that stuff because you're getting something from deep within the stowage space, it'll liberate a bunch of dust, and so it's just like in a home that's being cleaned. It can create kind of allergy-like symptoms. So more than gastro upset, we tend to have more kind of like allergy symptoms, and we're battling that more consistently than we are those other kind of things.
Interesting.
If that was the nature of the question, I'm not sure.
I hadn't considered that about kind of allergy type symptoms from the dust. That makes total sense. Okay, yeah. That's a good one. Let's see. What do you think are the biggest challenges we need to overcome before establishing a long-term presence on the moon or Mars? Well,
I think that we need to, for Moon, I think we're addressing some of these things. We've learned so much from the International Space Station in our near 25 years inhabiting that continuously, of what it takes to live, not just in microgravity, but in a remote outpost. And it may not seem, it takes a lot of energy to get to low Earth orbit, even though we're still only 250 miles away from the surface of our planet.
Right.
When we go beyond that, but orders of magnitude, like 250,000 miles, which is where the moon is. And then what is it, 2.5 million where Mars is?
Yeah.
I mean, it's orders of magnitude greater. It's whenever you've gone on a trip and you go, oh man, I left my thing, whatever that important thing was at home. Well, we better hope that thing, that we don't forget that thing when we go further away from our planet, because whether it's the moon or Mars, there is no turning back to get it.
Right.
There's only figuring out what we're going to do without it, or
Mhm.
something of that nature. And so I think that that's going to be one of the biggest challenges that we face, is trying not to overthink it, which I don't think that we're at any risk of that. I think you must overthink this,
Mhm.
but to not launch at all, because we're too afraid that we may get somewhere where our ingenuity doesn't carry us the rest of the way, I think would be a severe disservice. But we do what we can to think well in advance of all phases of the flight. And I think we're doing that for the moon, certainly, at
Mhm.
least in the parts that NASA's involved in. When it comes to going to Mars, there, I think the greatest challenge is that, but more importantly, how we're going to get our people back. I mean, we keep
Mhm.
talking about going to Mars.
Right. But then what happens?
Yeah. And so and also, so you got to get there, you got to do meaningful work, because the trip costs you a lot of energy
Mhm.
and time and sacrifice and money and all this to
Yeah.
get there. So the
Mhm.
work better be meaningful, and then you got to get people back. That's like the number one requirement.
Mhm.
And we just aren't there yet, figuring out how we're going to do that successfully and do all the other things.
Mhm.
And this is something, Ashton, for you and your viewers who may want to someday be in those capsules doing those missions. It's really important that you have meaningful work. You think that it's all cool looking out the window and all that stuff and floating, but that's exciting up to a point. But when you think about all of the sacrifices that you make to do this job, not to mention what your family goes through,
Mhm.
and all the people back home that are counting on you, either to fulfill the mission that they've placed in your hands, or have some component of that mission that depends on you to do your job.
Mhm.
You want to have meaningful work. And so there must be, I think, a challenge is to make sure that what we do when we get to these places has value.
Mhm. 100% agree with you. And to your point, it's not about just getting there. What are you going to do when you get there, and how are you going to get back? That's a huge challenge that we're still trying to tackle.
Yeah.
Okay, one more question. I know we're coming up on the end of time here. Question is, since you have helped assemble the ISS and have had 2 missions since, how do you feel about the future deorbiting of the ISS?
Oh, it's bittersweet. I
Yeah.
appreciate that question, because I think it recognizes that we've really created a good thing, to put it mildly. And having been there and actually seen the work, seeing watching solar arrays spin, and radiators turn, and just seeing boxes out, looking out the window and looking at solid metal boxes that I know there's somebody on the ground sending commands to that thing right now, and it's doing smart stuff to the space station. To all of the experiments that are put on board, to the labor of love that the International Space Station has been to the entire planetary community,
Mhm.
to deorbit that space station just seems like losing a part of your family
That's
and
a
all
loss.
of that work. You'd want it to be in a museum somewhere, but we know there's absolutely no way to do that, right?
We've talked
Um, what's
We,
that?
I said that's what I said. We've talked about this. What are the other options? Can we up orbit? Can we make it a museum? Can you bring it down in pieces and reassemble it on Earth, so people that would otherwise not have an opportunity get to go see the ISS, and all the, like you said, the labor of love, all the work that was done to build it, and
Yeah.
to see it just come crashing down is really sad.
Yeah, it is. And I don't think, considering the fact that we absolutely needed the space shuttle
Mhm.
to send those pieces, I don't see any way to get them back.
Yeah.
And to unbolt all those things, we're surely going to meet some resistance on some of those bolts. So you're right. But if there was a way to keep it in orbit, so that people could continue to see the space station and learn from it, not just utilize it, but see how a space station works. I think that would be one of the greatest losses of deorbiting. But we do need to end it at some point, because resources are limited. For if we're going to go beyond low Earth orbit, we'll not be able to get there if we're continuing to fund the International Space Station. If there was some way to keep that going at the same time with all of its spares. I mean, you think about your home and how many air filters you go through on your AC unit, especially if you live in Houston and ACs being as coveted as they are here. Just some of the mild maintenance things that you have to deal with at home, we deal with on a grand scale on board the space station, and the spare parts are not they're not simple. And so I just don't see a way to continue that unless we made that our primary focus. So it is kind of bittersweet, but
it's an
seems like
opportunity.
a necessity.
If somebody can come up with a better option, we are all ears.
Yeah, add me to that cheering squad.
I'll send you the follow-up afterwards. But I know we're right at time, and I just want to say thank you so much, Tracy, for being here, for chatting with me, for tackling all the questions. You're a great sport, and I've learned a lot, and there's some lessons I'm going to take away. So thank you again.
Well, it's been my pleasure, Ashton. Thank you so much for having me, and also for the really thoughtful questions from both you and the viewers. And I've really enjoyed this time, and I just wish you all the best, and your viewers all the best with the Mars Society and all that you guys have going on there to help raise awareness and to help us be productive someday when we finally get there.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me personally, and to the Mars Society. That feels really good to hear. So special thanks to our Mars Society team, James Burke, Michael Stoltz. Thank you, Leah, for your help behind the scenes. Thank you, everybody that tuned in today. And we're going to close out today the way that we always do. And Tracy, I hope this resonates with you. The best is yet to come. Thanks, everybody.